What happens when royalty meets reality? Live on British morning television. When Prince Harry sat down on the red sofa of Good Morning Britain, he expected polite questions and soft applause. But in just a few tense exchanges, the air turned electric. What began as a friendly chat between a prince and a journalist soon unraveled into a clash of ego, truth, and composure. By the time the cameras cut to commercial, one thing was clear: not even royal titles can save you from yourself. It was a crisp London morning. Outside the Good Morning Britain studio, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm. Taxis rushing past, commuters clutching takeaway coffees, headlines flashing across street kiosks. Inside, the atmosphere was calm but charged. The iconic red sofa sat under perfectly balanced studio lights, waiting for yet another conversation that could either inform or ignite. Susanna Reid reviewed her notes with practiced precision. She'd been doing this for years, interviewing politicians, artists, activists, and she knew when a guest carried tension into the room. The moment Prince Harry walked onto the set, she felt it. His handshake was brief, his expression somewhere between bored and defensive. The audience in the background quieted instinctively. "Your Royal Highness," Susanna began warmly. "Thank you for joining us this morning." Harry gave a thin smile, leaning back. "Pleasure's all yours, I'm sure." There was a flicker of surprise in Susanna's eyes, but her tone remained steady. "We appreciate your time. You've spoken recently about your relationship with the British press. Would you help our viewers understand where that frustration comes from?" Harry tilted his head slightly, a hint of condescension creeping into his voice. "I think it's fairly obvious, isn't it? The press has made a sport of my life, my wives, my families, and yet everyone acts like we should just smile and take it." Susanna nodded. The epitome of professionalism. That must have been incredibly difficult. "At the same time, many would say that public attention comes with being a royal," Harry interrupted, his voice cutting sharper now. "That's a lazy excuse. No one deserves to be hunted like an animal just because they were born into a name." The room seemed to tighten. Susanna leaned forward slightly. "Of course, I think everyone empathizes with that intrusion, but when you choose to share your story through interviews, books, and documentaries, doesn't that in some way invite public interest?" Harry's jaw tensed. "So you're blaming me for wanting to tell my own truth?" "Not at all," Susanna replied calmly. "I'm simply asking whether openness sometimes brings its own scrutiny." He smirked. "You journalists are all the same. You dress your accusations up as questions. You smile while twisting the knife." Susanna inhaled quietly, steadying herself. "I assure you there's no knife here, only curiosity. Our viewers appreciate hearing directly from you." "My viewers," Harry said, emphasizing the word. "You mean your viewers? The ones you spoon-feed every morning? The people you keep entertained with fluff and gossip?" The crew exchanged subtle glances behind the cameras. Susanna didn't flinch. "Our viewers," she corrected gently, "are thoughtful, informed, and capable of forming their own opinions. That's why they're watching this conversation." Harry laughed under his breath. "You make it sound noble, but let's be honest, Susanna. This isn't about truth. It's about ratings." "Ratings don't dictate respect," she replied, her voice smooth but firmer. "Now, I'm here to listen. But respect goes both ways, Your Highness." For the first time, Harry seemed caught off guard. His eyes flickered briefly before hardening again. "Respect is earned," he said flatly. "And from what I've seen of the press, it's in very short supply." Susanna tilted her head slightly, maintaining poise. "Perhaps. But today you're sitting with someone who spent decades earning it through fairness and professionalism. So, shall we continue?" Harry leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You sound just like the rest. Calm, composed, and convinced you're right." "I prefer to think of it as prepared," she replied, a hint of a smile returning. He gave a dismissive chuckle. "Prepared to defend the system that made you, maybe." There was a brief silence, the kind that feels longer than it is. Then Susanna, still gracious, said softly, prepared to have a respectful discussion regardless of who sits across from me. That was the first true collision of their tones, his dripping with disdain, hers steady and precise. The tension was palpable now, running under every word like a live current. "Well," Harry said finally, sitting back, "let's see if you can keep that composure when we get to the real questions." Susanna didn't look away. Didn't look. "I intend to." The segment producer signaled from off-camera. 2 minutes until commercial. The red studio lights glowed brighter, but the temperature between them had dropped to frost. Harry crossed one leg over the other and muttered, "Let's hope this isn't another ambush." Susanna smiled faintly, the kind of smile forged from years of experience, calm, deliberate, and sharp as glass. "No ambushes here, just conversation, though I can't promise comfort." He scoffed, eyes narrowing. "Comfort's overrated." "Not in morning television," she replied with composure, "but I'll take honesty over comfort any day." The kite blinked. They were live again. The audience clapped politely, unaware they were watching the early tremors of a live on-air earthquake. The applause faded, but the tension didn't. When the cameras came back on, the red sofa might as well have been a chessboard. 2 players sitting across from each other. Every move deliberate, every glance a calculation. Susanna Reid leaned forward with her usual warmth, but her eyes told a different story, steady, watchful, ready. Prince Harry, on the other hand, sat back with arms folded, his expression halfway between indifference and defiance. "Welcome back to Good Morning Britain," Susanna said smoothly, turning toward the camera. "We're joined this morning by Prince Harry to discuss his recent public statements and the role of the media in shaping his life story." Then, turning back to him, she asked gently, "Before the break, you mentioned feeling hunted by the press. Do you believe there's any way to rebuild that relationship, or is that bridge completely burned?" Harry gave a dry laugh. "Rebuild? You can't rebuild something that was never built on trust to begin with." Susanna nodded thoughtfully. "Fair enough, but many people might say you've had a complicated relationship with both the press and the public. Some of your recent remarks have been interpreted as dismissive toward ordinary people who—" "There it is," Harry interrupted, leaning forward. "That tone, that little moral lecture dressed up as a question." Susanna blinked but didn't react. "I'm simply trying to clarify. You're trying to frame me," he said sharply. "Like every journalist before you, you pretend to understand, but all you really care about is making your audience feel superior to me." The audience, who had been silent, shifted uncomfortably. Somewhere behind the camera, a crew member coughed. Susanna clasped her hands together calmly. "I can assure you that's not my intention. My goal is to have a balanced conversation, not a confrontation." "Then stop twisting everything I say," Harry snapped, her tone cooled a degree. "I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking for clarification. That's my job." Harry smiled tightly. "Your job," he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You mean pretending to be the nation's moral compass while peddling gossip for breakfast?" Susanna's lips parted slightly, not in shock, but in disappointment. "That's quite a statement," she said evenly. "Do you really believe that's what journalism is?" "I believe it's what this show is," he said. "You sit here with your perfect hair and polite smile and pretend you're above it all, but you're not. You're part of the same machine that tore my family apart." Susanna took a slow breath. Her co-hosts had gone completely silent. The control room whispered frantic notes into earpieces, but no one dared interrupt. She kept her voice level. "I'm sorry you feel that way. Truly. But I think our viewers would agree this show has always given guests a fair platform, including you this morning." Harry chuckled humorlessly. "Fair? You've interrupted me 3 times already. I've barely finished a sentence without being challenged." "That's not interruption," she said softly. "That's engagement." "Oh, engagement," Harry said mockingly. "You love that word, don't you? Engagement, empathy, enlightenment, the buzzwords of people who think being polite excuses being manipulative." The audience gasped quietly. Susanna's hands tightened slightly on her notes. Still, her voice remained calm. The same tone one might use with a child having a tantrum, Prince Harry, she said. I'm sorry if this feels confrontational. But you agreed to come on this program to share your views. That's what I'm trying to do. Share them, not shape them. Maybe you should try listening for once, he snapped. I am listening, she said evenly. I've listened to every word. Harry gave a dismissive snort. You journalists always say that, but you only listen for contradictions, not for understanding. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze. That's not true. I've spent 20 years listening to victims, to leaders, to people who've lost everything. Listening is what I do. Harry stared at her for a long second, clearly deciding whether to push further. He chose to. You've made a career out of other people's pain, he said coldly, including mine. There it was. The unspoken accusation turned spoken. The air thickened like fog. Susanna's composure wavered just barely. With respect, Your Royal Highness, she said carefully. You chose to make much of your private life public. You've written books, filmed documentaries, sat for interviews. You've taken control of your narrative. And that threatens you, doesn't it? Harry cut in, voice rising. Because now I don't need you to tell my story anymore. Susanna shook her head slightly, maintaining control. It doesn't threaten me. It disappoints me to see how quickly conversation turns into accusation. Harry crossed his arms. Maybe you just don't like being challenged. On the contrary, she said, a hint of firmness slipping into her voice. I welcome challenge. I just prefer it without contempt. There was a sharp silence. Camera zoomed in slightly, instinctively, almost nervously. Harry smirked again. Contempt is earned, Susanna. And so is respect, she said calmly. The studio went still. The exchange had crossed from tense to personal. Susanna looked down briefly at her notes, more out of discipline than necessity, then back up at him. Would you like to continue discussing your foundation's work? She asked, trying to guide the interview back to safe ground. Harry shrugged. If you can manage not to twist that too. She smiled faintly, though her patience was visibly thinning. I'll do my best. Don't bother, he said. You've already decided what story you're going to tell. That's not how I work, Susanna replied. He leaned back again, exhaling through his nose. Of course it is. You ask your clever little questions. You act calm and rational, and then you frame me as angry, defensive, ungrateful, whatever suits your narrative. Susanna paused, letting the silence speak for a moment before answering. If I wanted to frame you that way, Your Highness, I wouldn't have to lift a finger. The remark was surgical, polite, but devastating. The audience made an involuntary "oh" sound. Even Harry blinked, not expecting that edge from her. Susanna kept her posture perfect. Shall we move on to your charity's new initiative for veterans? Harry's jaw tightened. He hesitated, then said curtly, Fine. If you can manage not to make that sound self-serving too. Let's try, she replied with a calm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The interview moved forward. Technically, words were exchanged, topics shifted, but the tone had changed permanently. What was supposed to be a discussion now felt like a duel with microphones, and beneath Susanna's collected demeanor, a quiet line had already been drawn. The line that Harry was just a few comments away from crossing completely. The morning sun had risen higher over London, but inside the Good Morning Britain studio, the air had grown heavy. The red sofa, once a symbol of cheerful morning banter, now felt like the stage of a silent battlefield. Cameras rolled, lights glowed, and every breath seemed to carry weight. Susanna Reid straightened her notes one last time. She knew what she was walking into, the moment where an interview either recovers its balance or falls off the edge. Prince Harry leaned back, chin tilted slightly upward, exuding the confidence of a man who believed every question was an attack and every answer a defense. Let's talk about your late mother, Princess Diana, Susanna began gently. You've spoken before about how her experiences shaped your relationship with the media. Stop right there, Harry interjected sharply. You people never miss a chance to bring her up, do you? Susanna's eyes softened. It's not about bringing her up for drama. It's about understanding your perspective. No, he snapped, leaning forward. It's about getting a headline. Don't act like you care about my mother. You just want the clip that trends online." The temperature in the studio dropped several degrees. The audience, who'd been respectfully quiet until now, seemed to collectively stop breathing. Susanna took a slow, visible breath. "Harry," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "I understand this is deeply personal. I lost my father at a young age, too." "Don't compare yourself to me," he interrupted coldly. "You have no idea what it's like to live under a microscope your entire life. You can walk outside without cameras waiting to dissect your every move. I couldn't even attend my mother's funeral without being watched." There was no denying the pain in his words, but the anger underneath was starting to twist it. Susanna didn't flinch. "You're absolutely right," she said gently. "None of us can imagine what that was like. But surely by sharing your story now, you want to help people understand, not alienate them." Harry's laugh was bitter. "Alienate them? No, I just want them to stop pretending to understand, you included." Susanna blinked once. "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to don't try," he said, raising his voice. "You're not here to help me. You're here to make good television." The sound engineers froze. The producer in the control room mouthed, "Oh, God." Susanna's tone, still calm but tighter now, met his aggression with precision. "Good television happens when people speak honestly and respectfully. I can't control your honesty, but I can ask for respect." Harry leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Respect?" He let out a mirthless laugh. "That's rich. The same press that chased my mother to her death now lectures me about respect." Susanna's lips pressed together, a quiet, unspoken ache flashing in her eyes. That tragedy changed how we all see media responsibility. But to imply that every journalist bears guilt for that. "You do," he said flatly. "Every one of you. You feed the same monster, just with better lighting." It was cruel, and it landed like a slap. For the first time, Susanna's voice lost its silk and gained steel. "Be careful, Your Royal Highness," she said, her tone controlled, but cutting. "Words like that carry weight. I will not sit here and have the hard work of honest journalists equated with tragedy." Harry crossed his arms, smirking slightly. "Defensive? Are we human?" she corrected. The tension was unbearable now. Even the cameras seemed hesitant to move. Susanna adjusted her earpiece slightly, a subtle signal that she was aware of the live chaos, but determined to stay professional. "Let's turn to something constructive," she said, trying to pivot. "Your work with mental health charities." "Typical," he interrupted again. "When it gets uncomfortable, you move to the safe topic. That's not journalism. That's cowardice." That did it. Susanna's pen, which had been idly balanced in her hand, hit the desk with a quiet tap. She looked directly at him now. No filters, no professional mask. The empathy in her expression was replaced by something cooler, more resolute. "I've given you every chance to speak openly," she said, voice calm but resonant. "But what you're doing now, belittling this platform, this team, and our viewers, isn't a conversation. It's contempt." Harry blinked, taken aback by the sudden firmness. "Excuse me? You've spent 20 minutes dismissing every question, mocking every attempt at dialogue, and insulting everyone who doesn't agree with you," Susanna said. "That's not bravery. That's arrogance." A stunned silence spread across the studio. Even Harry seemed momentarily speechless. "You invited me here?" he finally said, his tone low, but dangerous. "Yes," she replied, standing her ground. "And I expected a man who could handle a conversation without turning it into a tantrum." That stung. His eyes flared. "A tantrum? You think this is a tantrum?" "I think," Susanna said evenly, "that you came here looking for a fight. And I don't do fights, Harry. I do journalism." The studio audience broke into quiet murmurs. Some nodded subtly. The host they'd admired for years, always gracious, always composed, was finally setting her boundary. Harry stood up abruptly. "This is absurd," he said, gesturing toward the cameras. "You should be ashamed of yourself." "No," Susanna replied. What's shameful is mistaking accountability for attack. The producer whispered urgently into her earpiece, cut to break. But Susanna raised a single finger. Not yet. Let's be clear, she said to Harry, still calm but unyielding. You are welcome to share your story here. You are not welcome to insult this platform or the people watching. Harry's voice rose again. You think I need your platform? Please. I've spoken to Oprah Anderson Cooper. This show is nothing compared to them. Then perhaps, she said, her tone finally hardening, you should have gone there instead. Gasps erupted across the room. Harry froze, humiliated, furious, and visibly losing his composure. The director in the booth mouthed, Go to commercial now. But the damage or the revelation was already done. Harry pointed toward her, his hand shaking slightly. You'll regret this, he said. Mark my words. Susanna looked straight into the camera, her voice cool as glass. We'll be right back. The red light blinked off. The show cut to ads. But behind the cameras, in that heavy silence, everyone knew this interview had just crossed the line. And when they came back, someone wouldn't be sitting on that sofa anymore. When the cameras faded back in, the tension could have been sliced with a scalpel. The iconic Good Morning Britain jingle played faintly under the returning broadcast, but the energy had shifted entirely. Gone was the warmth of morning television. What remained was something colder, sharper, realer. Susanna Reid sat poised, her notes neatly stacked, but forgotten. Prince Harry had returned from the brief commercial break, visibly agitated, jaw clenched, hands gripping his knee as though holding back another eruption. The producers had whispered through her earpiece, Keep it calm, keep it short. But deep down, Susanna already knew calm had left the building. Welcome back, she began, her voice steady, but with a new edge of gravity. We're continuing our conversation with Prince Harry, who's been sharing his thoughts on the media and public perception. Harry smiled, though it was the sort of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Oh yes, continuing, he said dryly. Because heaven forbid anyone cuts short a royal scandal, right? Susanna didn't bite. Didn't. It's not about scandal, Harry, she said softly. It's about understanding. That's what journalism is, dialogue. He tilted his head. No, it's performance. And you're the star, the sympathetic host, the calm face of British hypocrisy. A few crew members visibly winced. The audience murmured. Susanna's hands stayed perfectly still in her lap. Harry, she said, her tone patient but edged with warning, if you came here to insult rather than converse, we can end this at any time. End it? He laughed quietly. Oh, how convenient. When things get uncomfortable, you just shut it down. That's very on brand for this show. Susanna leaned forward slightly, meeting his glare with one of her own. No, that's called maintaining standards. Standards, he repeated, smirking. The word people use when they're too scared to tell the truth. The truth, she said, is that this platform has given you every opportunity to be heard, and you've used it to belittle everyone involved. Harry sat back, folding his arms. Because you don't listen, Susanna. You pretend to, but you already have your story written. The spoiled prince, the angry royal, the ungrateful son. I can practically hear the headline being typed. Her eyes didn't waver. No one's writing your story for you, Harry. You're doing that yourself. That line landed like a gavel. The studio fell silent. Even the floor manager stopped moving. Harry's lips parted slightly, caught between rage and disbelief. You're unbelievable, he said finally. You twist everything, every question, every word. It's all designed to trap me. Susanna sighed, her composure still immaculate. There's no trap. There's only accountability. You don't seem to like that. I don't need accountability from you, he said, almost snarling. You're not qualified to judge me. And yet, she said, voice cool as glass, you came here to be heard. That requires trust, respect. Two things that seem to vanish the moment a question challenges your comfort. Don't patronize me, Harry shot back, voice rising. I'm not patronizing you, Susanna said firmly. I'm reminding you that conversations work both ways. He shook his head, scoffing. You really think you're clever, don't you? The calm, composed journalist taking on the angry prince. Congratulations! Your viewers will love this. Her expression hardened for the first time. My viewers, she said evenly, love honesty, not theatrics. Oh, come off it, Harry said, standing up abruptly. This is exactly what you wanted. A spectacle, a viral clip, something you can play on repeat tomorrow. While pretending to be outraged, Susanna remained seated, her voice lowering. You're doing that all on your own, Harry. No one asked you to be disrespectful. I'm being real. He snapped something your industry wouldn't recognize if it bit them. Real, she echoed. Real doesn't mean rude. Real. It doesn't mean entitled. It doesn't mean attacking people who are trying to have a civil discussion. You don't get it, he said, pointing at her. Now. You never will. You're part of the system. The one that destroyed my family, my peace, my stop, she said quietly, but with unmistakable authority. Just stop. Harry froze mid-sentence, startled by the steel in her voice. This isn't therapy, and it's not a blame session, Susanna continued. You came here to talk about your work, your projects, your message, and all you've done is insult, accuse, and deflect. I've hosted this program for years, and I've never had a guest show this level of disrespect to the people sitting in this room. The silence that followed was deafening. Harry stood there stunned, his composure slipping entirely. You're kicking me out, he said, incredulous. I'm asking you, Susanna replied, to either continue this interview with respect or leave. He stared at her, disbelief flashing into fury. Do you know who I am? Susanna's voice was calm but unwavering. Yes, I do. You're a guest on my show, and right now, you're out of line. That was the breaking point. Harry laughed bitterly, shaking his head. Unbelievable. You'll regret this. No, she said quietly. I won't. He looked around the studio, expecting someone, anyone, to intervene. No one moved. Not a producer, not a cameraman, not even the audience. All eyes were on him. Fine, he spat finally. I don't need this. I don't need you. He tore off his microphone pack, the Velcro snapping loud in the quiet studio, and dropped it onto the sofa. Good luck with your standards, he sneered before turning and storming off the set. The sound of the studio door slamming echoed through the silence. For a long moment, Susanna didn't speak. She simply exhaled, steadying herself. Then she looked directly into the camera and with a small professional smile said, Well, that was unexpected. We'll take a short break and return with something much calmer, I promise. The studio audience broke into a mixture of awkward laughter and applause. When the red light above the camera went dark, the crew erupted into murmurs of disbelief. One assistant whispered, He really just walked out. Another muttered, That was wow. Susanna sat quietly, adjusting her papers. Her producer came over whispering, Are you okay? She nodded, offering a tired smile. I'm fine. Just another morning in television. But everyone in that studio knew it wasn't just another morning. It was the day Good Morning Britain made history. The day a prince stormed off and a journalist refused to bow. The moment aired across Britain before breakfast had even ended. Viewers flooded social media with praise for Susanna's composure. Clips of the confrontation trended worldwide. Some called it the royal unraveling, others the calm before the clapback. But Susanna didn't dwell on it. The next morning, she was back at the red sofa. Same seat, same smile, same poise. Because real professionalism isn't about silence or submission, it's about standing firm even when the crown across from you loses its shine. And that's where it all ended. The prince walked out. And Susanna Reid reminded the world that class doesn't come with a crown. It comes with composure. If you enjoyed this story and want more dramatic behind-the-scenes moments like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Tell us in the comments, was Susanna right to end the interview? And of course, hit the like button to support more stories just like this.